Right. Welcome to this webinar organized by Driving Urban Transitions, the European Partnership, Driving Urban Transitions to Sustainable Future, DUT. And this seminar aims to accelerate a circular economy in European cities and towns. And we wish in these 2 hours to give you an opportunity to delve into a comprehensive mapping of European city practices in urban circular transitions. And so you will have an insights from an ongoing project that is a key activity in DUT. And my name is Katarina Skylberg, and I'm leading the communication team in DUT. Based in Stockholm is the communication team. The rest of the team is based all over Europe. And today I will lead you through this seminar, starting with the agenda. First, you will have an introduction to DUT by Björn Wallsten, who works for Formats and also is the DUT Transition Pathway Coordinator for Circular Urban Economies. And then we will be introduced to this mapping activity by the Sweco team, starting with Charlie Gullström and Carlo Negri, that will present the mapping approach and describe the data collection process. And this will be followed then by a presentation of the tentative framework for future visualizations. And that is also by the Sweco team, Kathleen van der Werf and Kevin Penelva Halpen. And you will be able to ask a few questions after each of these presentations. So please go ahead and use the chat and post your questions. And then after we will have a short break. And then you will come back and you will then also be able to listen to a panel with 3 distinguished experts that will give you then an insight and more perspectives on how this mapping tool can be used. So with this, I leave it to Björn.
Yes, I think you all can hear me now. So my name is Björn Wallsten, and I'm a senior research officer at the Swedish funding agency Formas, and I'm also as Katarina mentioned, one of the 2 coordinators for the Circular Urban Economies Transition Pathway, or Q. We also have with us today my colleague Ann Maudsley, who is also the let's say co-coordinator, if that's even a word. Ann, could you just quickly say a few words about yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. Ann Maudsley, Senior Research Officer at Formas and Coordinator with Björn of the Circular Urban Economies Transition Pathway. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I can't see my video, but I am here. So I think we have some kind of technical problem there. But yeah, hope you enjoy the seminar today. Thanks, Björn.
Thank you, Ann. And so I will here first for this webinar do an overview introduction of first the Driving Urban Transition Partnership, and then dive a bit further into the Circular Urban Economies Transition Pathway to somehow give you a context of the mapping activity that you will hear about today. So first then, and to say, hang on, let's see. Yes. The DUT partnership is what you could call a public-public partnership, and it's co-funded by 28 European countries as well as the European Commission. The DUT consortium, which consists of slightly over 60 partners, consists of national and regional R&I funders, authorities, as well as governmental agencies. We also, as strategic partners, have a set of research performing and other organizations in our team. One of the core instruments of DUT is our yearly calls. Like we will launch 7 of these during the program period from 2022 to 2028, with an annual call budget averaging something like 70 million euros. And just to give you a quick little info here, on the first of these 7 calls is that we funded 48 projects and a total number of 159 urban public authorities, which is to say cities and regions and their involvement in the projects that we fund. And so this is then a key and takeaway message from what the DUT has to offer, that our target group, and our offer is directly aimed at the cities level and the urban transition, let's say. So this is at the core of our partnership program. Thematically, the DUT partnership is structured in 3 so-called transition pathways. We have one called the 15-minute city, which tackles the urban mobility transition. We have one on positive energy districts that target urban energy transition issues. And we have the circular urban economies transition pathway that addresses in different ways the urban resource transition. So the wheel to the right here on this slide shows the different kind of formats the DUT has in place for capacity and community building. I won't go through all of these, but just to mention a few, we have a workshop format called the Agora Dialogues, which some of you might have participated in. We also are currently setting up a knowledge hub comprised of experts from our funded projects. And we have a stakeholder platform, which we call the City Panel, which is how we mainly and first and foremost engaged with our urban stakeholders throughout Europe. So all of this is to say that DUT offers various ways of involvement for cities, and that our ambition is to fund research and innovation relevant for urban actors. Diving then into the circular urban economies transition pathway, I would start by saying that we acknowledge the importance of technological innovation as well as updated business models, but we are also intent on going beyond the sometimes quite technocratic circular economy discourse, and we also want to address urban greening aspects as well as social issues that we see in many cities throughout the world today. These aspects and issues are, for example, related to socioeconomic equalities, related to decreased social cohesion, unequal access to urban resources, services, green areas, and so on. So in a way, you could say that we regard the circular economy toolbox as something to make use of to create regenerative urbanism. This is also to say that circularity is not a goal in itself, but a tool that can be used to somehow achieve improved urban livability. And this broad understanding, let's say, of what a circular urban economy entails is also key when it comes to the pathway's mission and what we want to achieve, namely to foster the design of urban places characterized by regenerative urbanism, by which we mean livable, inclusive, and green communities and neighborhoods that are sustained by circular urban economies and resource flows. One of the ways to get there, and this is somehow where the Sweco team comes in also, is to do a mapping work to identify criteria, key elements, and building blocks for Q approaches and designs. Our ambition is to add 10 new, improved, and/or adapted solutions per year to a portfolio of circular urban economy innovations, and thereby, and as the mission of the pathway, create an innovation portfolio of 50+ solutions that somehow and in different ways will contribute to the urban transformation towards regenerative cities. And this is also, in a sense, this portfolio is one of the deliverables that we will be evaluated on, let's say, when the partnership is over. And it also, this innovation portfolio is one of the key, or let's say, the mapping of Q cases and the report that you will hear about today is also clearly and related to this innovation portfolio in the way that it sets up a kind of baseline for how we can collect and compile cases and then systematize and try to do some kind of overview of definitions, strategies, instruments, and implementations of measures related to the areas in focus of our transition pathway. So we didn't have the internal resources to do this ourselves in DUT, so we hired a team from Sweco, the consultancy firm, to do this for us over the last year. Their work, understood broadly, has been divided into 2 main categories or key activities. The first is a kind of proper mapping of circular cases in Europe, which also entails setting up a framework with criteria and elements and so on to collect and visualize cases on a kind of overview level, you could say. But then, and also, and in a, let's say, second step or level, it's also to prepare for deep dives and set up a framework for a kind of second level data collection based on 4 impact value dimensions. So in a way, the presentation you will hear today from Sweco is divided according to these 2 tasks. And another thing that I think is important to take away here is that this presentation and this tool and this method is not only or it's not a static mapping of cases, but also, and quite importantly, something that will also continue to work, and we will continue to collect cases with the help of this framework also after the Sweco's commission have ended. And that was then my attempt to somehow contextualize this mapping task and the webinar today. And you got also to know a little bit more about us, the DUT team, and the organization of things. And now I will hand over to you, Katarina, again, to also allow us to know a little bit more about you. And I will surrender the control here. Let's see, like so. Thank you.
Right, so let's see, did you surround? So I'm now in control. Good. Let's see. Yes, we had 300 people signing up for this webinar, and now we want to know a little bit more about you. So we have a QR code here. Let's see. So I'll give you a few minutes to go into this Menti. And while you're entering the Menti, I could also then remind you that if you now were very curious to know more about the UT and the report presented here today, you can find all of that at the website, DUT website. Let's see, but now I think you all managed to get into this. Give some more time. All right, control says there needs to be more time. All right. Let's see. Now I'm going to share. Going to see here then. Yes, it's growing. Have to have a look here. Strong participation from Sweden, Netherlands, Italy, Spain, France. That kind of mirrors also what used to be in the DUT calls. Let's see, United Kingdom, Portugal. Yeah, right. Let's go to the next question then. Which is, in which continent are you based? And you can choose in between Europe, Americas, Asia, Oceania, and Africa. And there was a similar mapping seminar 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago on the 50-minute cities, and we want to compare here if we were also able to reach out beyond Europe this time. So let's see. Yes. One from the Americas. All right. Maybe moving forward. What is your organization? Now we want to know whether you belong to an NGO or local initiative, business and utilities, public authority, research or other. And these are the DUT prime target groups actually in our communication. So let's see, yes, quite a bit research, business and utilities. That's a little bit out of the ordinary. We usually have a more, let's see, surprisingly few NGOs though. Circular urban economies has so many potentials for small scale initiatives. All right, moving on. Right to the last question, which is this your first time with DUT? Have you visited any of our conferences, webinars, applied for a call, perhaps? All right. All right, while waiting for that to go on, I think I'll just stop share this one. You can still fill in. I won't close it. I will just stop this and move on to this one instead. And soon we're coming to the key. All right, so now I'm finally handing over to Charlie Gullström and Carlo Nero, and surprise, they're also in the
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here sharing the results from this work that we had together with DUT for almost a year now. I'm Charlie Gullström. I'm head of research and innovation at Sweco Architects and a young professor in circular economy at Chalmers. And
my name is Carlo Negri. I'm an architect at Sweco Architects, working together with Charlie on the mapping collection of data for the circular urban economy cases across Europe.
And Sweco is a leading architecture and engineering consultancy. We work in 15 European markets. We work in multidisciplinary teams and address almost all the areas of sustainability that you can think of. I want to point out that we have something called the Sweco Urban Insight Knowledge Platform, where we report on circular economy and sustainability regularly. It's a great resource. So we've used our broad network of experts to be able to carry out this work. And this is maybe our most important slide, Carlo.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. So please, while you're sitting watching this, take the time to scan this barcode, because we would encourage you, while we've collected a number of cases already, we want this to continue. As Björn said, this is a live thing, so we want it to continue. So please scan the barcode, and then you can use that time to go through the questionnaire to add another case in. So please do that.
In the break.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've spread this invitation broadly to help collect cases. So we've used our networks at Sweco. We've used the EU and DUT, of course, network. So it's been ongoing now for more than half a year and will continue, which is great. So let's now look into this toolbox. What's in it? Well, we have a work method to share with you, a work method for intelligent data collection. We've made a Q questionnaire, a Q database, a scoring model, and we will show you how we use a standard tool to generate dashboard reports. So the work process in 4 steps. So of course we need to collect cases. And as I said, it's been a collaborative effort, almost you could say crowdsourcing. So this QR code is easily filled out on your mobile phone. As a second step, we've structured the database with cases that are filling in, according then, of course, to a questionnaire that we've devised. We've been sorting the data in various ways to see how DUT can make use of it. And as a 4th step, we will show you a tentative framework of visualizations. Our colleagues, Kathleen and Kevin, will share that after our presentation. Okay, so what's this method? Well, it's a method that fills up a database, which can be infinitely large. And if it gets larger, of course, we will be able to apply machine learning or AI to be able to analyze the data. This is not part of our work, but it's a help for DUT to continue this process. In the beginning, we thought that we would have like a throwing in, like a go, no go, like not all cases would qualify. But instead, what we've done is to make sure that we have a scoring model. Now, I'll come back to that. So a questionnaire needs to be extracted. So we have called this the Q urban impact values. because we've been taking the essence from the Q pathway that Björn introduced to you in the introduction to be able to formulate those questions that you are seeing when you go to the questionnaire. So in red now you see some keywords which represent a little bit of the gist of this a very impressive but broad, integrated, system-based invitation. And this has been then the basis for, I won't go into all the details as you understand. So the questionnaire has questions that are grouped a little bit in thematic approaches. The max points you can get from this questionnaire is 85 points, but you could get as few as -20 points because we have two questions that we regard as the most important, not most important, they are important because if you answer on the one you see at the top here, if you answer that your case does not belong to an urban context or to a urban/rural context, then you actually lose quite a few points. Also, the other question you see, if there is no data available, we've called that also a killer question because it's very difficult to build a database if you don't have relevant data in it. So in view of future usage by DUT, it's been important to try to see where can we find relevant data about those cases. So you see a little bit how we grouped the questions, and you will see more about that later. But basically, some questions relate to social sustainability, and they amount to 12 points. Resources is, of course, a very important question to pose to materials, and we are favoring cases that are making use of more than one reuse. Oops, there's another. So resources is really a key thing for us. A lot of circular urban economy deals with various kinds of resources, many resources. So what is the resource is one of the questions we want to work a little bit with. Based on a resource or many, there is some kind of process launching. It can be a design process, but some kind of planning leads us to looking at a value creation. There's probably some kind of distribution to users or to consumers, or some kind of output is being delivered. And of course, here is what is important. What kind of urban impact comes from this circular urban economy case? Well, if we look at this as a kind of loop, we can say that everything goes on. In the beginning, as I mentioned, we thought we would have a possibility of throwing cases out, but we find it more interesting to use the scoring model. But so this continues. Look here, the resources, of course, can be reused. There can be new added resources. But basically, this value creation process means that we can have several loops in one case. We can have several loops at different scale. So there are a lot of dimensions that we have to deal with when we talk about circular urban economy. That multiplicity of approaches is really key. Now you are seeing our dashboard, you're seeing our database, you're seeing the most recent cases that have come in. You see that we have 151 cases. You see that some are yellow, and that's because we have identified a focus group of the DUT-funded projects of recently funded projects that we're launching this year. So we're comparing them a little bit to the overall database. We'll come back to that. But so if you input a case, it will pop up here for everyone to just see a website and a date. At the moment, we are looking at 151 cases because we're sorting away those who are scoring 20 or less than 20 points. And here you see also in yellow this DUT batch, where we are really happy to have 15 project leaders who helped us to evaluate our work in April at the DUT conference in Brussels. So over a little bit to
Yeah,
you.
just to talk on the actual dashboard itself and the tools and the way that we've come about this method, because obviously there's a lot of complexity in circular urban economy, as many as you all know. But how in starting this mission at the beginning was to try to figure out a way to really keep this process as simple as possible. So when we're through a mapping process, how to do this to not make it overcomplicated and to try and invent the wheel on this. So we use the suite of Microsoft 360, a good way to sort of collect through a series of different software services and apps that could easily connect data together, connect all of these resources together, but equally find a good way to visualize and discover what's really important, because I think that's also one of the key things. But then as we kind of hand over this, how do we kind of make it easily available to share to others, and in particular to DIT? So those were I think the starting ground and the key aspects to our work and in doing that. So here, this little sort of AVI is just to show a working method. This is linked to Teams, so it's part of the 365. We can link the questionnaire, which can be changed to different languages as you go in, and you will go through this process of inputting a case, which hopefully you're doing now, and you would have already seen this. But then going into the Power BI, and as Charlie showed, we'll see the total number of cases, where they are mapped across Europe. They're all geo data tagged, so we know exactly where they sit. So we can get that information, which is provided through the questionnaire. And so you then, it enables us to, once we have that data collected to list, we can link the websites to it, and you can see here all the DUT cases we've highlighted for this particular instance, but they could be other criteria there. And here we've said that what are the cases that are only score up to 20, and pick a particular case like this one in France, which Charlie will talk about in a moment, in Paris, to identify that and link to their website, so you can actually go directly to the source and see the information, and then really have all of that data with the submitted cases as divided by the scoring of the categories, so we can go in and look at the operative cases, the cases that are live right now, that are actually being built, not just the ones on the drawing board, and really then go in and pinpoint, say again, here I highlighted the case in Paris, and go through the tool, the scoring criteria of each of the cases. So pick out each one. And then be able to kind of pick out more and more data and sort data here. So you see the different types of data that from all of the 153 cases, like what are the resources or what are the stakeholders. So we can see here that 84 of those 153 were public sector projects. So as that grows and that number of cases grows, so this enormous amount of data grows, we can see where they are and where they sit. So it's a really powerful way of visualizing the data in a very easy way, and comparing and contrasting, and then seeing where the top cases are, or which has scored the highest in the different cases. So and all based on this software that's really quite easy to use, and as a kind of very powerful tool that enables us to kind of collect this data and move on. So I think it's interesting maybe just to dive in very quickly, Charlie, into a case, which we thought was kind of interesting as it showed up in the case. So what was interesting about the case, and how did it score?
Yeah,
why
are we showing this case? Because we think it's really quite typical for one of the high top scoring cases in here. It's it's a very small piece of land in Paris, and the city of Paris invited for a public procurement process, and so it's like a typical competition in our field, won by architects, but in a very broad team. But the impact that they're generating for the whole neighborhood is what really makes a difference here. So of course it's like a system, it's like a block. But in this block, you have food, you have urban food production, both indoors here, upstairs, you see this greenhouse and open agriculture here as well. There is a housing block, a building to the right, where students and homeless live. But there is also now an organization of the sort of sharing economy at neighborhood level, because these people who live here, they also work in the farm, but also by collecting food waste from restaurants and supermarkets in the area. There's a lot of things going on in terms of in construction and innovative technologies in this, so you can really call it a living lab. When I was there, I saw people in the neighborhood coming to collect their Saturday greens, and I imagine they are also part of this somehow. So with a restaurant and like a passageway for going up to a nice area, it's a really interesting case that somehow targets what we call the urban impact values. Locally produced greens, of course, is a value, but the fact that they're generating this community node for a community center, and also very nicely designed. And it really points at the value of human resource, because this is people, this is driven by people. And let's not forget, it gives a lot of metrics. Potentially one could, one could find out how much is harvested, how much carbon emissions, etc., in all the currencies, even time spent. So that's an interesting case. And now I think you've understood a little bit about the toolbox that we're giving to DUT. I mean, as an EU program to monitor, accelerate circular urban economy, it's very important to be able to know exactly what is in there. How do the projects that DUT funds, how do they qualify in the big batch of Europe? So we think that this work method is valuable. We see the value also of being able to cross-examine the data. And we will now give you some examples of that. Let's say, for example, that DUT is interested in those cases that are operative, that are in use right now. Well, here we took the top 10 scorers and to see which one of the top are also in operative phase. So we see that there are a few. And here we look at all the cases in operative phase. So we see that there are about 50, I think. That's one thing. But it could also be that DUT is asking, we want to see cases that are listing human resources as a key contribution to the collaboration around a case. So then we have looked at that, and it's so easy. Power BI is the tool that gives everyone this possibility, but it's a matter of asking the right questions to the data always. So here to the left, you see the big database, and to the right, you see this smaller batch of DUT projects. So this can have some value. What we can see is that the DUT batch scores quite well, or is well represented in terms of human resources. 94% of it's a small batch, but you see the potential here. Compared with in the overall database, 60% have listed human resource. So we can go on, and we think another target question for DUT, of course, is this issue about NGOs and grassroots. Do we find them in this way of searching, which is quite research? There's a bias, of course, on research and innovation, but we do find them overall to the left, and the DUT projects to the right. And so we have these possibilities now of bringing together like the top cases, the top scorers in the whole batch, and then also looking at this question: to which category does the initiating organization belong to? And so therefore we can cross-examine, and we can see that there are NGOs to a high extent. In the small batch, we see 20 listed as initiating organization and 60 as other stakeholders. And then we can compare that to the big overall database where we have 17 as initiating and 12 as other. So there you are. And that's the last one now. What if DUT wants to find out which are the cases that score high on data availability? Because we know there's room for improvement here, but this is very important. And of course, here the DUT projects are not so relevant because they are just launched. So it's more about looking at other cases. So which ones both score high? in terms of available domain data and overall score. There you see them. Okay, so key takeaways here. Well, it's a work method to generate intelligent dashboards. And this is important to visualize the multiple dimensions of circular urban economy. It's not a repository of best practice cases, but it could be, and we will probably talk about that. It's a steering instrument to accelerate circular economy. You can monitor, you can refine the calls so that those who apply to the calls directly respond to some of these questions. And of course, it could be a support also throughout the project development phases. And a point that circular urban economy is much more than material reuse. The value of human resources, the value of making sure that many resources are used more efficiently is what can generate innovative approaches and sharing economy models. So we think the last thing to say is that by adding more cases, all of us can actually contribute and enrich the meaning, the value, the meaning of the term circular urban economy. So with that, we say thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. I won't just let you off the hook yet. I'll just be in the middle. And we haven't received any questions yet in the chat. So while waiting for that, I would want to know, so this is sort of a break off now that the report is out, but it's also open. This the mapping exercise, the tool is going to be open for quite some long time. Do you know, is that a question for Björn, or do you already know? How long can you keep on adding your...
Well, certainly the questionnaire will be open and ongoing. And as we said, it's really, the more cases we get, the more data we get, the further this will go. So that's really important. And then, yes, I mean, the idea is that it should continue and keep going.
Yeah, DUT has promised that at least this year. But I think, you know, there needs now to be an internal work activity within DUT to see how can we benefit? How can one make use of this as a work tool?
Yeah, and can you only upload or map or introduce your own projects, or could you
No. Yes, of course. Yes, that's good. Good question. Definitely, you know, you hear of a good case and you think, where is that URL to this questionnaire? So that's how we've been working so far.
Yes,
we've been uploading when we have been talking to people. We've been spreading the word in social media, through the website. So of course, you can say who is in charge of cleaning up the database, and that is work for DUT. But that's why we will talk now about, you know, how could DUT make use of this so that it be a public resource somehow.
Right, and we have, sorry, I'm out of the picture here because I'm reading from my computer here. We do have some questions now. So let's see. Oh, yes, the scoring and points, who evaluates, and how do you know it is a fair evaluation?
So it's an automated scoring model. What I showed you with the grouping of questions in different relating to different topics was not the whole. We didn't show you all each question has a grade. So when a case is uploaded to the database, it sorts the cases according to our scoring model. So there's no evaluation going on. It's a good question, because what you're really asking is, how will DUT be able to tweak the questions so that they really get the kind of data they're interested in? But we can't do that for them. We have provided a way of doing this, and a functioning way, I would say, because we think we've looked at our top cases. We think there is a strong value in what's come in, but there's definitely possibility to tweak this.
All right, and another one. How can we upload new data on an already submitted study case?
Yes, it's also a really good question, which has been discussed already when we had a work session in Brussels. So this is about the hosting of such a database. So if DUT really wants people to work with them as a program in this way, project leaders or others, there will be some kind of portal, of course, where you can come in and you can, let's say that if you're a project leader within DUT, you after year 1, you do a first project report, you upload that, you add some photos or, some kind of user interface between DUT and the projects would be needed.
And being able to update the information and the data in there, because that's actually a really important aspect to it, that the information is fresh and live, that a lot of the projects and cases, I mean, they are long term. So from year 1 to year 5 to year 10, we need to know and see how the projects have gone and the cases have gone, and then really be able to evaluate that if it's been a success or not. So it's really important.
All right, thank you for now. Now we're going to introduce 2 of your colleagues to continue, and maybe Charlie, you were doing the continue to do.
Shall I help you with the slides, Kathleen?
Actually, I managed to link my computer, so I could ask remote control. It's no problem.
Excellent.
Great.
Perfect.
So, hello, good afternoon to all. I'm Kathleen van der Werf. I'm a business development manager at the BUUR part of Sweco, which is the urban planning and environment division of Sweco Belgium. And I worked on this project together with Kevin Penalba, expert in circularity, also from Sweco Belgium. Actually, I will present the second part of our study, which is a tentative framework for future visualization by BUT. And I will dive into the second level of data collection, because once the cases have been collected, the following questions are arising. What additional data is needed, this time from experts and stakeholders that are really deeply involved into the project or the case? So which additional data is needed for a better understanding of how the circular urban economy cases really create urban impact? And a second question, how might UT want to visualize this database to their target public? So we did a prospective exercise on a more refined clustering and elaboration of the selected cases. And we did this by building a more holistic framework for evaluation and dissemination, which is structured on 4 impact values. So first of all, we translated the 3 impact values of circular urban economy that were defined by driving urban transition, which are innovation ecosystems for circular economy, urban planning, design and sustainable land use, and capacity building for regenerative urbanism. And we translated them towards 3 dimensions: systemic innovation in resource efficiency and reduced waste, spatial innovation and regenerative urbanism, and process innovation and social benefits in a circular urban economy. And we added a 4th dimension, which has to do with complementary data that is very important if we really want to monitor, but also to disseminate the cases. So here are the 4 pillars of our framework: systemic innovation, spatial innovation, process innovation, and the complementary relevant data. And I will run through each of them together with you to explain how we see it. A first impact dimension is the one of systemic innovation in resource efficiency and reduced waste. And in order to collect more data of a case on the aspects of resource efficiency, some following questions might be interesting and additionally asked to experts. Which circular resources are at stake? Are we talking about water, biodiversity, energy, materials, waste, food? Or are we talking about urban functions and their program? And which aspects or component of those resource flows has been addressed and how? And to what extent has the resource been optimized, and can you provide quantitative data on that? So this might be one aspect in the system innovation to tackle. The second aspect might be resource efficiency, reduced waste. And so we could ask more information on applied strategies for reducing waste by asking more information in the sense that which circular strategies of the R ladder have been applied. The R ladder is a widely known framework, so that's why we proposed that one. So if you look at the traditional linear process, which is explained in the scheme, did the applied circular strategies focused on either closing the loops? Then we talk about recycling and recovering, or it's a focus on slowing the loops. Then we talk about repurposing, remanufacturing, refurbishing, repairing, reusing. And all those aspects take place in another moment of the process of the traditional linear process. Or are we talking about narrowing the loop? Then we're really talking about reducing, rethinking, and refusing strategies. And for the selected strategies, could you elaborate how they have been addressed and if there's also, again, quantitative data available? So this might be a first set of questions really focusing on this systemic innovation. Then we come to the second impact dimension, which is the one of focusing on spatial innovation and regenerative urbanism. And related to that impact value, the following information could be asked. At what scale the case is operating? Are we talking about a region scale, a city scale, maybe a network of different cities? Neighborhood scale? Are we talking about a building or a building block, which is very concrete, or even building components? And also the spatial context is very relevant. Are we talking about a site or a case in the city center or more in the residential neighborhoods? It can be a more hybrid zone with a mix of economy and housing. Are we talking about a real industrial area at the city edge, or maybe part of a green-blue corridor? Or are we talking about the rural area? But also more information could be asked on applied spatial strategies. And to really structure this well, we proposed a clear matrix with 6 spatial strategies, and where all the strategies integrate on the one hand, the different flows of resources, for example, water, biodiversity, energy, waste. And the question is, how are they, well, we translated them into different spatial layers, from the underground to the mobility network, to open space network, to specifically green-blue networks, the building scale or level, and the program level. And so we came to 6 spatial strategies, which for each of the flows also propose different potential actions. So one of the questions could be, which of the following spatial systems and strategies are applicable in the case, and how? Is it design with the soil and underground? Is it encourage sustainable mobility? Is it improve the quality and capacity of open space? Is it restore green-blue ecosystems, or promote circular construction, or strategic economic interweaving? So this about, yeah, I need to, sorry. This about the 2 dimensions. A third dimension is the one of process innovation and social benefits in circular urban economy. So in that sense, more information could be asked on, for example, process innovation. Does the case foster or promote co-design and participation processes? If yes, please elaborate. Or maybe also ask about capacity building processes. Did the project resulted in mobilizing people for a transformative change? Or does the case include innovation on project leadership, management and governance? Or also new planning tools and methods could be applied. So we question all those aspects related to process, but also aspects related to social benefits can be addressed. For example, what are the social impacts and benefits generated by the project's job creation? Then we talk about employment. Is it life quality with aspects of safety, health and well-being? Is it about capacity building and skill development, or more awareness and the mindset shift? And then a last 4th dimension is the one of the extra relevant data. that is really important if we really want further evaluation and dissemination. And it will be more clear later if I show how we could apply it. For example, the clarity and completeness of information and data for future dissemination. Just is there nice information and good information available, but also measuring and mapping circularity. Do they have an innovative approach? Are some numbers available? A third one could be the capacity of replication and scaling up, which is very important as well. The readiness and maturity level might be interesting, ranging from a good idea towards really an implemented case with already the build-up of resilient partnerships. Or are we talking about enabling success factors like disruptive technologies, innovative business models like sharing economy? Digitalization might have played an important role, design and planning issues as well. So, yeah, I know it's very structured, but that was actually really the purpose. So just to question if a very structured methodology of this second level data collecting based on the 4 pillars, yeah, in our point of view, it also allows a very structured visualization of the cases. Because through this methodology, the cases could be presented and visualized in a DOT online repository. For example, in the form of a project portfolio linked to the DOT website, as it is illustrated here tentatively. And we really think that, yeah, bringing the selected cases together could provide an overview dealing with circularity in a more holistic way. So the framework not only allows to present the cases in a very structured, visually appealing way, but it also allows for filtering and selecting the cases according to different criteria. And so in this way, DOT could also stress priorities and specific approaches when dealing with urban circularity in its communication. Also, other possibilities of visualization has been proposed or tested. For example, visualization in a European map or visualization, yeah, showing the cases according to applied strategies and resource flows. And as an illustration of the potential, we worked out some of the cases. I don't know any detail about those cases, but it shows how well structured these cases can be communicated or disseminated. The first case visualizes the case of Kalundborg, industrial symbiosis. It's a project in Denmark, and it's actually the first industrial symbiosis cluster with a circular approach to production and industry. The project is focusing on slowing and closing the loops, where residual flows in one company become really the resources in another company. And so thanks to the setup of local partnerships, where also the city was involved in, large industrial companies work together across sectors, and they can share energy, water and material access. So it's really a win-win for everyone. And so in this case, systemic innovation has been implied in the resources, energy, water, waste and biodiversity. 2 R strategies have been applied, recycling and recovering. It's a case which is on the neighborhood, on a specific site scale, in an industrial area as a spatial context. And the spatial strategies that have been applied are designed with soil and underground and restore green-blue corridors. Process innovation and social benefits, we can say that it's creating employment. And it is actually a process that has been already, a project that has been already implemented. So we can really talk about a high level of project readiness with already very strong partnerships and in the public and in the private sector. A third case is Blue City. It's in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. This is a case situated in a former tropical swimming pool It was already set up in 2015, and today it hosts more than 55 companies, and it really forms a very dynamic ecosystem of circular-driven companies. So it's, again, a complete other topic, but it has become today an international icon of the circular economy. An essential part of the Blue City is also the Blue City Lab, which is really a place for experiment. So again, completely different case involving many aspects of circularity, many resources, many applied circular strategies. This one is on the building level. It's located in the city center, and the spatial strategies applied are circular construction and economic interweaving. It has a lot of social benefits. It's working on employment, but also on awareness, since you can visit it as a visitor, but also on capacity building to the Blue City Lab. Again, it's an implemented project. And the last case that I brought today is the one of the circular district Oosterhoever in Belgium. This is a project where the city of Ostend worked on an integral strategy. And they not only wanted to focus on creating space for economy, but really on creating coalitions of actors that could accelerate circular transition. And we were appointed to define a systemic and multi-dimensional spatial framework based on different circular strategies, but also this project focused on funding synergies among key actors and on the setup of cooperation models. And so again, it's an example, a case of a very integrated approach, but this project has not yet been implemented and is only on the level of having different partners committed. Actually, this framework has been tested in a workshop in Brussels, recently organized by DUT, with concrete partners of the selected cases of the recent DUT Circular Urban Economy call. And the participants gave us this feedback. I think, as we all know, there are plenty of views on circular economy, and it is very important to communicate and to get in dialogue with it. So in that sense, some feedback was that the proposed framework was useful only as a dialogue model already, and that the visualizations are inspiring and clarifying. So someone said that, an online dashboard based on this framework would be really useful for many target groups. But there were also some remarks, for example, nature-based solutions and sharing economy are aspects and topics that could be integrated in a much more explicit way. And for example, the dimension of policy and decision-making and law and regulations could also be stronger criteria. And I would like to conclude with some overall reflections for the future steps of the DUT Circular Urban Economy Transition Pathway. And one reflection is on alignment. On the one hand, alignment of the mapping approach with goals and projects, because we are convinced that this dynamic data collection methodology, and then I refer to the both approaches, the one that Charlie and Carlo explained and the one that I just explained, that the combination could really lead to strategic feedback loops for future calls, and that in that way, this methodology could support and even strengthen further the DUT strategy. But on the other hand, also alignment among the three transition pathways, positive energy districts, the 50-minute city, circular urban economy, because the three pathways have a common aim to find a clear way to transition. And so this means, on the one hand, building up new systems, but also breaking down old systems. And this is a very complex thing. So exchanging insights and successful strategy is very important to mutually reinforce each other. And then a last reflection is on the potential of this dynamic mapping as a bridge between, on the one hand, bottom-up perspectives from cases, projects, stakeholders, cities, and the top-down governance, regional, national, European levels. On the one hand, but also a bridge between academic research and implementation in the field. For example, based on this dynamic data collection, academic research questions could be brought up really from experiences in the terrain. Voila, I want to thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathleen. That was really interesting, a deep dive into this framework. And we haven't received any questions yet, but feel safe because we will have a panel who will talk and reflect about this framework in the coming hour here. So we will deep dive and get more answers. The questions you didn't know you had will be answered. And also Charlie and Carlo, you will also come back in the end of this seminar to share some more takeaways, etc. But is there something you want to add right now before the break?
No, I think it's we're curious to hear how our panel reflects together with us on this. So
yeah.
And I can just say, I mean, it's been a fantastic dialogue and collaboration together with DUT. So we're really happy to have been involved in this process, and just looking forward to seeing it grow further because it is complex. It's a complex subject, but sure, we look forward to seeing it grow for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We're now going over to a panel discussion, and you will hear reflections and inputs from a selected number of panelists. And to somehow frame this, you could do this in light of the EU Cities mission, the overarching initiative to accelerate climate transition in European cities, and which operates through several instruments and initiatives for research and innovation for the urban transition. So some of these instruments specifically target circular economy and various dimensions that this broad term entails. The UT partnership would be one example of this, with the dedicated pathway towards circular urban economy. Net zero cities would be another example, assembling 100 or even more cities to adopt novel forms of participation through stakeholder interaction and citizen engagement, as well as signing climate city contracts. And then we also have the new European Bauhaus that can also be considered a strategic instrument in line with the above, given its aim to bring practitioners in architecture, art, and the creative sectors understood broadly to the tables. So, and besides these EU Commission-driven initiatives, there's also actors such as Circle Economy, a global foundation that aims to empower decision-making makers across industries, cities, and nations with clear and actionable ways to make their spheres more circular. And in the light of the report that we launched today, we have invited a panel from all of these three initiatives and organizations to discuss how the presented mapping approach and initiatives to collaborate between our different organizations and initiatives can accelerate the transition to the a more circular urban economy. And I'm gonna start by invoking you, Helena Bjarnegård. You are the state architect of Sweden, and you work at the Swedish National Board of Housing, Building and Planning, and also you are a national contact point, I should say, for the new European Bauhaus in Sweden. So, to set things off then, and in light of how circularity somehow is related to your roles here, do you think that this kind of work methodology that gives an overview of best practice with a selection of indicators to target circular urban economy is useful for the many different EU initiatives that operate in parallel? So that first part of the question, but also what benefits do you see with this kind of mapping at the national level of EU countries?
Thank you so much. And first, I wanted to say thank you to Charlie, to Carlo, to Kathleen, and all of you working with the DUT initiative. And I can see that we are working on the same matters on different EU initiatives, exactly as you said, Björn, and it's very kind of similar to the new European Bauhaus initiative, where sustainable, inclusive, and beautiful living environments is in the spotlight. I can also see that this is very valuable for us working at a state level. And I'm very impressed by the simplicity of the tool, and that it at the same time there's so many values, and that it put the finger on in the enabling success factors. When I'm working on a national level in Sweden, I work at the State Agency for Housing, Building and Planning. It's like a ministry, or if you compare to the other countries in Europe, or some way between the ministry and other authorities. And we can see that the built environment in Sweden, then the planning and building sector stands for 20% of the carbon footprint. And for other countries, it's much more, actually. So this is a very, very important task that we work with in a lot of different tasks from the government. For example, we have a commission to work with circular economy in the planning and building sector. And we've been also doing a questionnaire with the planners, builders, property owners, and so forth. And they lift so many hinders. Actually, they lift that we can't do this because we need new knowledge. We need to change the norms. We can't do this because there are so high costs and low demand. We can't do this because we lack the technology and logistics, and we can't do this because of the laws and guidelines. And when we also look at the figures for housing in Sweden and the housing that we build, we can also see how many new houses are being built and how many houses are existing houses that have a new that are being repurposed. And we don't see an acceleration at all. So circularity is on the same level as it has been for years and years and years. So we need to change this system. We need a transformation. And we need to think enabling factors instead of all of those hinders. Because even if property owners and people in the business, at least in Sweden that we've been talking to, says that it's impossible, we can't do this because of all the hinders, we can see in your mapping that it's not impossible, that circularity, circular urban economy actually happens. So I think that illustrates that we need a new way of thinking. And all that I've heard today, I learned so much today. And to see how you have structured this method, to see for just a little while how many examples you mapped and what results you can draw from this. It's very, very inspiring. And this is exactly what we need, because I don't think it's impossible at all. I'm not even sure we need to change the laws so much. We just need to, kind of hook arm, start to do this, start to stop working in the linear way, start to work in a more circular way. And you have shown how to do it. And all the examples shows it's possible. So I think we need to take this to the governance level in all EU countries, and just to inspire. And you have a network here with the practitioners, with NGOs, with researchers that has so much knowledge, and we need you. And we need all the inspiring examples to, twist the mind, not see the hinders, see the possibilities.
Thank you so much for this response, Helena. And also, I mean, to further add to this, this is also the kind of drive and the creative drive behind this also bottom-up approach, let's say, of collecting cases that I thought somehow builds a momentum from the ground up somehow. I think that's that was just to say something about the sort of initial starting points of the mapping exercise here. So thank you so much for sharing on this. I would like to just now move over to Joost Boonderman. You work with the Net Zero Cities initiatives, and you're also co-founder of Dark Matter Laboratories. But here and in your capacity as a Net Zero Cities officer, I might say. And given that you collect data, or that your cities collect data about their progress, and with a rich set of indicators that also include the circular economy, it's interesting to hear your view, if you have discussed some kind of online repository within the Net Zero Cities as a resource for your cities or the public, and what kind of information such an online repository should consist of, and also given and in the framing of the mapping and the approach presented here today. Joost.
Yeah, thank you. And I had some connection issues earlier, so can you see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us here, and congratulations on the approach taken. I think it's very, very rich indeed. I'm very impressed. So Net Zero Cities is, of course, the mission platform for the EU mission for 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. And as was already alluded to, one of the things that the 100 cities across Europe, and there's also a few from partner countries, are working on is these so-called climate city contracts as a whole city approach to accelerated decarbonization, working together with all relevant actors in a city to achieve more impact faster, which is what is needed. Now, the mission really officially only involves scope 1 and 2 emissions, so not necessarily consumption-based emissions, but we all know that Mother Earth doesn't care where emissions come from, and that therefore circular economy and as a key lever to reducing consumption-based emissions is critical, and many cities across the mission are actually, and we're really happy to see that, emphasizing a circular economy approach as integral part of their emission reduction effort. And we all know this is necessary. I think Helena already referred to this. The annual Global Circularity Gap report shows that we're actually going backwards, not forwards, at a global scale. So we know how important this is. And so what we're seeing across the mission is that cities are starting to focus on food-based emissions, so food systems, focusing on closing biomaterial loops in waste. They're focusing on really addressing plastic waste in incineration. So that's, of course, fossil fuel-based, so that ultimately adds to emissions very clearly. But also are starting to ask really tough questions around how much can we still build? We have a housing crisis, but we also know that the built environment-based embodied carbon emissions, as Helena already referred to, is one of the things that will blow our carbon budget right across Europe. And actually, the numbers are really scary. Even we're seeing that perhaps some of the retrofit models being promoted across Europe might be unaffordable for not just from a financial and labor force point of view, but also from a material and embodied carbon emissions point of view. So there's really tricky questions out here. And I think Net Zero Cities is creating a platform that and a portal that is full of keys of approaches and case studies and ways of working that can inspire not just 100 mission cities, but also missions of non-mission cities beyond the 100, because the whole point is to scale up beyond the 100 and to enable more and more cities to achieve climate neutrality faster. So this kind of knowledge portal is integral to our approach as well. And I think here's where we come to collaboration, right? Because at the end of the day, a mission-driven approach is about recognizing that it's not about what each of us can do alone, but what we can together make happen. Right? And so that means that both front-runner cities and those cities who are just starting to recognize the role of the circular economy in their climate neutrality pathways needs to be supported in different ways. So I do see that these case studies, and particularly the analysis of the case studies that you're creating, can be a key reference point for that. And we really look forward to seeing what joint approaches to build on this could mean. Now, I do think it's important to recognize that cities and municipalities are right across Europe somewhat overwhelmed. They're somewhat overwhelmed by case studies, by new approaches, by knowledge portals, etc. So I think one of the important things from here is how we socialize this information and how we enable the human connection that goes across and that amplifies the knowledge being gathered. And that is perhaps something we can discuss a little bit more from here on. But certainly, and I know that Net Zero Cities and DUT is creating a memorandum of understanding that we are looking to work together more, and I think that is critically important. Same is true for the Bauhaus work that my home organization, Dark Matter Laboratories, is also involved in, focused in particular on this built environment embodied carbon perspective. So I think there's lots of collaboration necessary and possible, and I think it will be all about enabling cities to really access and internalize the wealth of information that is here. Because just having it on a website is important. It's not enough, but it's a very important first step, particularly with the kind of analysis you have done.
Thank you so much, Joost, and to second what you see and hear and think about the collaborative aspects going forward here. I think we shall absolutely return to this in a second round of questions, let's say. But I would first like to also introduce and welcome to this panel Lauren Semmering from the Circular Economy Foundation. It is clear that you are involved as a foundation in several activities that are clearly related to the report that we presented today. You have the circularity gap report, as well as different kinds of impact reports. And so in light of this, how do you see the approach that we have been presented today as complementary and or aligned with the kind of initiatives that you've been doing, but also given the kind of bias that our mapping today has towards R&I projects, how do you work with reaching out to specific target groups? Because that we perhaps as a funding instrument and or partnership program have some difficulties to reach out to. I'm thinking not the least in terms of grassroots movements and NGOs and these things. So please, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this panel. I'm very impressed by the work that was presented today. Yeah, so first of all, I think bias is a very natural thing to have in any kind of research, and that it's good, first of all, that that's being recognized. I think in the case of, in this case, that research-based initiatives are more likely to be more highly represented, just considering the fact that, you know, the circular economy is still relatively in its infancy and the definition is still under development. So it's likely that a lot of grassroots initiatives maybe aren't even aware that what they are doing contributes to a circular economy, especially since, you know, there's a lot of different frameworks and angles that the circular economy can relate to. So I think this is where continued awareness raising is super important to reach more of these initiatives. What we do see in our case on our case study platform is that over half of the cases that we have are business cases. So I don't know if we can consider that to be grassroots per se, but it is different from research-based initiatives or policy implementations. So they are there. And the way that we typically try to reach, let's say, these local implementations, even as an established, you know, presence in the circular economy, we recognize that our organization's reach is limited on its own. And this is where, you know, strategic collaboration is really important to amplify impact. So in our nations and cities projects, we typically collaborate and partner with local circular economy organizations. And these organizations usually have, you know, tend to be well connected to what's happening on the ground in their region, you know, more so than we are here based in Amsterdam. So I think partnerships and networking are super valuable to expand, you know, reach and scaling impact. And that's also part of the philosophy behind what we're doing with the Knowledge Hub in terms of making it open access and trying to set up a database where everyone can really contribute, you know, and have other NGOs and research organizations, grassroots initiatives share their cases, because we find that, you know, these initiatives, they want to share their stories and their experiences. So I think it's important to give them a space to be able to do so.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren. Speaking then and continuing the discussion, maybe on the collaborative aspects here that several of you already have raised. I mean, how can we, I mean, maybe also in even more concrete terms, collaborate better to generate more impact between the kind of different bodies and organizations and initiatives that we represent here today? What possibilities do you see to develop joint databases, or at least publishing our databases in a, let's say, collective effort somehow? This is all, and I think this is actually key for all of our respective initiatives. It's a DUT thing, it's a net zero cities thing, and I think it's also, and for sure, a new European Bauhaus thing. But what synergies do you see here in this, in light of the things presented today? And who wants to start here?
I can start. But the synergies are evident, and you have done this, so everybody else don't have to do this. So I guess that we all, if we could make it simple, we all sit on several chairs. We are working with the cohesion funds and a bunch of really big projects in Sweden. We are working with the 100 climate neutral cities in Sweden. We have 23 cities who has signed the contracts. 7 is on the same program as Joost talked about. So we all sit on those different chairs. So just to start to share this knowledge, that's the first step. Because this tool is really so good. And that's the first step. Then I also sit on this national level. And I think that the ministries, the national agencies, working on commissions from the government, not just in Sweden, but in all different countries, we also need to spread this. And we have networks with architecture directors from all countries, for example. We can, spread this in this network. So we have so many chairs where we could share knowledge. So don't make it too much technique with databases and so forth. Just start to share and talk to each other. I think that's a very good first step, and we can get a long way just by doing that.
Yeah, and we're happy also to very much talk with you and the new European Bauhaus initiative for sure in this regard as well, right? So just to have that said, but yeah, Joost or Lauren, care to share here?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Helena. I think developing joint databases may not be the pathway to salvation or climate neutrality here. I think it is about recognizing that there's always going to be diversity of resources, that they live in different places, and that the most important thing is to connect them at a human basis. And so, for example, very pragmatically, I can see how, along with colleagues in the city's mission, we can talk to specific cities or to cohorts of cities or to clusters of cities to really highlight and bring colleagues from Driving Urban Transitions and from this program in to say, okay, here's a very powerful set of examples, and then almost go further into discussion, say, okay, so what sort of systemic enablers, Helena, I think you mentioned this already, what kind of systemic enablers have made this possible? In some cases, has there been creative use of existing regulations, or have new regulations been necessary to level the playing field? So I see these databases as the starting point for deep dive discussions between cities. I talk about cities because I suppose that's my professional deformation in this case, right? But to really start use the knowledge gathered and make it even more dynamic and connect to case studies, connect to people who've been analyzing these case studies, and that is also what I notice cities appreciate, right? Cities don't ultimately want more PDFs with information. They want to hear things from the horse's mouth. And that's what really convinces not just the officers, but also the politicians that this is possible, desirable, and doable, and has multiple benefits. at the end of the day, transition is deeply human, and we need to therefore work with the human factor to accelerate further.
Thank you, Joost. Lauren?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I definitely share the sentiment that you know, any knowledge sharing is important. And I think collaboration and joining efforts towards like our common goal is of course valuable. I do think there are many organizations and initiatives that have really great examples of the circular economy. And I think that while the circular economy community is becoming larger, it is still quite fragmented. So I do think, you know, while we should continue to share all this knowledge wherever we can, I do think it's important that even, you know, these bodies sharing this knowledge come together and do see how we can collaborate and pool our knowledge. Because I think pooling resources together can multiply the transition. And that's something that we do try to facilitate through our work and platform. But we try to still approach it in this human way where we make it possible for anyone to add their cases, you know, so nobody really owns the content or the information. It's more just providing, again, another platform to share these resources to hopefully create, you know, a magnified impact, if that makes sense. And also even allow, you know, the creation of different frameworks by which things can be searched. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to connecting beyond this webinar to see how we can all work together, you know, and pool our resources. But yeah, sharing knowledge is, you know, the most important in all of this. Yeah.
And one thing I would add to that, perhaps, is shaping future calls and projects being incredibly important, right? So one, of course, is sharing what we've learned so far, but it's also about enabling cities and other organizations to really integrate approaches by virtue of us together trying to steer where future calls for funding may be focused, right? Let's not underestimate perhaps the opportunity we have to also be part of that forward-facing agenda of directing next research and innovation efforts that are really cross-mission, cross-domain, cross-silo.
All right, to perhaps wrap this up then, and just some quick comments from each and one of you. What should DUT do to advance this kind of mapping approach going forward? Is there something that you think should particularly be highlighted? And also, is there something you feel is lacking here? Anyone? Just quick pitches, because I think we're a bit short on time, but yes.
I don't know that I see anything very clearly lacking, but I am really curious about how the continued collection of these cases will go. You know, our philosophy also really is for collecting information from the ground up. So I'm just really looking forward to getting an update on, you know, where that stands in a month, 2 months time, as you know, this call continues to remain open, and hopefully that we can all learn from that together as well.
And I think the tool is very, very good as it is, actually. So keep it simple, whatever you do. Keep it simple, exactly as you have done, and reach out to the cities where things actually happen, and use all our networks to do that.
Thanks a lot. And Joost, any final words here?
I would say that I'm going to be slightly internally contradicting myself. So on the one hand, I would say, yes, absolutely, keep it simple. On the other hand, we all know that case studies have always been directly or indirectly, often invisibly been enabled by these systemic enablers. And it's always good to recognize and try and draw that out a little bit more. I would say if you were to add or focus further on anything, I would say governance, contracting, finance, regulatory environment, and all those kind of things, whilst keeping it simple. So there's your challenge.
Thank you so much, Joost. And thank you all for participating at this panel. I think the next step here is to invoke and do a little Q&A thing with selected speakers. Do we still have time for this, Katarina? I'm looking at you, and or Charlie in the room there in the studio.
All right. I think we're pretty much running out of time, and I think Anne has done a good job of answering to questions. Or is there any other question? No. All right, thank you so much. Excellent, excellent panel. Maybe, and it was really interesting to see that even if this database isn't the sole road to salvation, at least it sounds like it's a beacon on the road to salvation. So with that, thank you so much for the panel, and I'll ask Kathleen to come with some takeaways.
Okay. Well, for me, what came out of this webinar, but also for the whole study, is the importance of effective governance. How effective governance plays a crucial role in driving sustainability and innovation solutions. And after reviewing more than 150 cases and gathering insights from project partners through workshops and through dialogue, it is clear that the target audience of the DUT governance is quite diverse. It's ranging from EU collaboration, research projects to very local bottom-up initiatives. So it's more question, but it might be necessary to refine the language to clearly distinguish between these levels in future steps. But I see a potential for this working method, but also for DUT to have three defined goals. On the one hand, inspire and encourage stakeholders and public administrations by collecting and disseminating successful cases. It has been pointed out by many panelist members how important inspiration is. But then in a second aspect, also translate applied methodologies into really concrete strategies on multiple governance levels. And so act more as an accelerator and capacity builder, translating those methodologies tailored maybe to different governance levels, local, regional, national, EU. And then a third aspect, I think, is this collaboration with impactful networks. We really have a strong voice on the EU strategy. For example, Net Zero Cities, as Joost mentioned, he mentioned we need to socialize information. I think that's indeed a next step, but also a strategic collaboration with circular economy, like Lauren talked about strategic collaboration and to amplify the impact. So I think all members are a bit aligned in that. And then a last takeaway for me is, keep the collection of cases simple, but apart from that, maybe also we have to embrace complexity, because I feel that most of the strong cases, and for example, also the cities of the Climate City contract, as Joost mentioned, many stakeholders need to work together. And so, complex processes need to be set up interdisciplinary, cross-governance, and so on. So I feel we need more new knowledge for architects, urban planners, contractors. Also, Elena was mentioning that today they see a lot of hinders. But we also need professionals that kind of strengthen their skills in system thinking, process architecture. So in my opinion, like the transition management will really become something really important in future in processes like these. And then a last point is we will need human resources, because transition is human. I found it a nice sentence of Joost that I will end up with.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathleen, and over to you, Charlie.
Yes, I'm so happy that the panel gave us such positive feedback. It really, it's really interesting, this kind of discussion that we can have now that the way of working has been demonstrated. Maybe the panel didn't comment so much on what I thought, like should it have a repository or not? But in a way, you were discussing this, that there are already the value of collaboration between bodies that are hosting data, such as Net Zero Cities, for example. I mean, it's a huge data set from all these 100 cities, and a selection of that is valuable for DUT. So the discussion on synergy, I think, was really important. But then also that Lauren was pointing out that the grassroots maybe are not seen here, and we know this from the bias of our work. But it's also that the framing of circular economy has not included the social dimensions as much as it has still been a focus, which is an important focus, you know, on climate neutrality and CO2 equivalents that we need to target. But beyond environmental, we need to get, and Juice was on this a little bit, we need to get people on board, and sharing economy and circular economy is people, like Kathleen was saying as well. What I was maybe thinking that they could have talked a little bit more about, our panel, was the need for common metrics, because what I feel is that circular economy is an emerging new field. It needs both academia and practice. It needs industry, it needs public bodies such as those you represent in the room. We need to sort of find ways of working to actually target the multiplicity of these dimensions. And we're lacking, I think, in a conceptual framework, and we're lacking in metrics beyond CO2 equivalents. So I think there's a lot to be done, and for sure to be building on those that are already hosting repositories. And we have Circular Economy doing it, Ellen MacArthur, OECD OPSI, you know, so it's more a matter of maybe playing out the synergy between these bodies, I think, as a next step. Yeah, I'll stop there, but thank you so much for taking an interest. And also I want to thank everyone who's been helping us to create the database from all the all parts of Europe. You've been inputting cases, and otherwise we wouldn't have this work today. So thank you, Björn, for commissioning us to do a really nice job together with everyone here.
Thank you, Charlie. And over to Björn. How will DUT take this further, and what are your reflections from this intensive 2 hours nearly?
Yes, I think that you could say that, I mean, I do takeaways and a kind of final reflection, both in a DUT internal sense, but also in a DUT external sense, right? And if you crunch the numbers just by overview, we will, in 7 calls and 50 projects per call, and then 3 cases per project, we will end up over the lifespan of DUT with some 1,000 cases. I mean, and how can we, as a partnership program, make sense of all of this? And how can we showcase them? And how can we, from their examples, compile a portfolio of innovations? I think that this is one of the key items here and the key takeaways in terms of what the framing and the method and the work done by Sweco over the last year. And I also see a potential then and continue, let's say, natural continuation to also, like you said, Kathleen, extend and align this tool also with the other 2 pathways within DUT, so somehow make this as it's a possible way to somehow compile and showcase DUT funded as well as other cases generally. And then to second, not least, Joost, would be that it's not only for monitoring reasons and or as a deliverable that we construct this kind of mapping and or an innovation portfolio, let's say, for the pathways. It's nice to have a collection of cases for sure, but we need to take this forward. We need to find processes and design activities, arenas, possibilities on how we can take these cases and extend them to the stakeholders that our program is actually targeted towards in all our activities, let's say, to valorize, to replicate, to scale, to mainstream the learnings that we have can somehow harvest from the cases collected. So I think that would be something that that is also, let's say, an upcoming task for us to find out ways to sort of communicate and create knowledge transfer out of the cases collected somehow. So those would be, let's say, 2 takeaways then, one more DUT internal one and one more DUT external one, if that's sort of sorting works out, let's say. I don't know, to conclude, we have a little slide, I think, that where we present also the upcoming call. There was one question, at least in the chat, where it was mentioned, like the funding possibilities that are in this field in the European context. Like, so DUT has a call each year. It opens in September and runs for the first stage up until November. We will do a soft launch in the beginning of July 2024, but we can already now communicate the key topics for this fall, which will be, you see them on the right here, are the urban water cycle, creating a new water paradigm. We have one topic on the renaturing of urban spaces, circular solutions for urban biodiversity. And we have one topic on multi-city strategies for circular economy, monitoring and management. So perhaps, this final topic here is the most, let's say, methodology related one of the topics going forward. So consider this as an opportunity. There will be plenty of more information of this to come for sure. And of course, and to have that said, there will also be topics in the other two pathways. But here we are in a circular urban economy context. So I thought it would be a nice thing to share these already now.
I think with that, I would like to thank you so much to the speakers from Sweco and to the panelists and to Björn and to everyone who listened. And and tell your friends who didn't make it to this event that it will be, we have recorded it and we will upload it on our YouTube channel for further listening and watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for a nice collaboration.
Thank you.